Number 1. I felt I had to share this encounter, because honestly, I never thought I'd experience something like this myself. Some quick background leading up to the night in question. I was graduating from university the next day, so I was determined to get an early night. I'd gone around to my friend's house for a spliff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a pothead. It was more of a celebration. Anyway, I remembered I had to take my mum to the hospital. This was nothing serious, but she had to be taken and picked up. Then I remembered that we'd rolled the joint in the car. Disaster. She'd smell and see it everywhere. So I made a mental note to stop and vacuum the car. We have a 24-hour petrol station really close by to us, but it's sort of on its own, as in there are no houses or buildings around. I pull in and look over to the shop. They use a hatch after 12 and don't allow you inside, but I didn't need anything. It had just passed 4 AM, and I had to be up at 10 AM, so I wanted to get this done and just get out of there. The vacuum machine was behind the coal shed, but it was very well lit. I cranked on some music on my phone and got to work. £1 for 4 minutes of vacuuming. Not bad, I thought. No one else was in the parking lot, except one white van, but the guy inside was yelling wildly into his phone. Not loudly, just making a lot of gestures. Honestly, I felt for him. Probably some guy who had been driving all night. But hey, I cracked on with the work I had at hand. Then I looked over again, and I caught his eye. He looked away, and I laughed. Love at first sight, I thought to myself. I was in an amazing mood. Then it started to get weird. The summer sun was already starting to rise, and the streetlights went out, including those illuminating the petrol station. It wasn't dark, but it was noticeably creepier, and I was keen to really get a move on. I stared over at the van, and I saw the man watching me again, still talking on his phone. But then something happened that really freaked me out. I saw someone lean forward from the other seat and peek around the guy, then immediately slam themselves back against the seat. That's when I realized the guy on the phone was in the passenger seat and wasn't driving. I hadn't noticed it when I drove in, but I shrugged it off and set the vacuum cleaner back, ready to leave. I threw all my stuff back into my car and went to unlock the door, when a voice said, "Excuse me." I swear I nearly shat myself there and then. My heart was absolutely pounding. But I recognized the voice. The petrol station was a Spar, the same chain of stores I work in, and the guy who'd spoken was my old supervisor. He'd moved to the 24-hour station not long ago. He began to shout at me for using the vacuum so late at night. The two guys in the van just sat and watched us, as if waiting for him to go away. Then he said something to me that made this whole situation real. "I'm going to have to ask you to come inside." We weren't allowed to let customers in past 11, even in stores that are open until 12. This is a big no-no, especially as I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. I allowed him to lead the way, and the moment we got into the store, he put the shutter down. He told me he'd been watching the guys in the van, and they'd been sitting there for nearly 3 hours. Little did I know, my old supervisor saw someone get out of the back of the van and, as he described it, put some masking tape across a few digits of their number plate, effectively creating a new one. I began to panic, but looking outside, I noticed the van was gone. After checking the CCTV, it was shown that they had sped away the minute that I walked into the store. We called the police, and they examined all the footage immediately, what little there was of it. They took the tape and thanked us for bringing it to their attention. At one point on the CCTV, The guy who got out of the back of the van turned to get back in it, and it looked like he had a knife in his hand. I realize that I sound dramatic, but I cannot help but imagine what would have happened if my old supervisor hadn't been looking out for me. I'm never vacuuming at 4 a.m. anymore. That's for sure. Number 2.
A little background on me. I'm a 19-year-old male living in a semi-large city in Ontario. It was around 11 at night, and I had just finished working out at the gym. I went to the grocery store to pick up some food for the next couple of days. While I was at the grocery store, I decided to get $120 cash back, money that I owed my mom, and unbeknownst to me as I left the grocery store, money that I came so close to losing. Instead of going straight home, I decided to go for a little drive. I just got my car not long ago, and the novelty of driving stick hasn't worn off yet. After about a half hour of driving around the city, I decided it was about time to head home. As I passed a gas station on the edge of town, but close to my house, I decided that now was as good a time as any to stop in and fuel up. I pull in, and I'm the only one at the gas station. I'm in an industrial/business part of town, the edge, I like to say, so there isn't much around. There's an empty lot that's without light besides the gas station, and I notice an SUV sitting there, about 100 to 200 meters away, but I don't think much of it. I get out and start pumping gas, when I notice a woman come around the corner and start walking straight towards me. As soon as I noticed her, a shiver ran down my spine. I instinctively locked my car. She walked towards me quickly, hands in her pockets, staring at me pretty intensely the whole time. I got in a fight with my boyfriend, and he left me here. Can you give me a ride to my mom's house? She said casually, in her raspy smoker's voice. Another chill ran down my spine as she repeated the question, word for word almost, in that same raspy voice. I have to pump gas first, I said to her, keeping my eyes on her the whole time. She walked around to the passenger side door, beside me, fuel port is on my passenger side, and grabs onto the door handle. Can you unlock the car? I'm cold. I've been here a while. I have to pay for the gas, I said, deciding to cut the gas pumping short. I walked inside and talked to the guy behind the counter. I told him that the girl outside was kinda suspicious and that I didn't know her. He just kinda shrugged, and I could tell he wasn't interested in getting involved, so I walked out. I figured she was just high or something, but I was confident I would find a way to get her to leave me alone. As I walk out, the SUV that I had mentioned earlier started up. I watched the driver maneuver himself so he could easily pull out the exit. He stopped, engine still running. He was still about 100 meters away. Can you open the door now? I'm really cold. So many alarm bells were going off in my head already. First, she just looked sort of sketchy. She was dressed well enough, but her face was pretty rough. She was pretty covered in makeup, but it didn't hide a nasty-looking sore on her lip. Her sunken eyes were dull, bloodshot, and just dead-looking. Second, she didn't seem like a damsel in distress. Not at all. She didn't seem upset, and she spoke without much emotion. No, that's not my problem. I need to go home, I said to her, as firmly as I could. Come on, you're driving me home, right? I can't. I have to get home right now. Reaching for my phone, I realized I had left it in my car. I'm cold. I've been out here for hours, she shouts. Pretty angrily for someone who's asking for a favor, I thought. Then I noticed her look at the SUV. I started cluing into what was going on, and I raised my voice a bit. "That's not my problem." I'm at the driver's door now. "I'm freezing. You said you'd drive me home." "That's not my problem." As I started to raise my voice, she started raising hers. We weren't yelling, but it was getting a little heated. We went back and forth like that for a couple of minutes. My mind was racing. I thought about losing my car, about getting stabbed or shot, about getting robbed for the $120 I had in my wallet. I just lost it on her. "Get the fuck back! You don't know who I am! Get the fuck back right now!" I guess I was in fight mode at this point. I was pretty ready to just fucking clock this bitch if she tried anything, as awful as that may sound. I think I caught her off guard or something, because she stepped back right away. "You better get out of here right now then," she said, while walking backwards. I instantly felt my balls tingle sadly and climb up inside of me after she said that. I was out of fight mode, and into fucking flight mode. I watched her until she got a decent distance away, noticing that she was walking sort of towards the SUV. I didn't watch for much longer. I hopped in my car and peeled the fuck out of there. I turned into a random subdivision, making sure I wasn't followed. I called the cops, and they said they'd send a car, but there wasn't much they could do, because there was no real crime committed, but that I did the right thing, and she was most likely bait for some kind of robbery. I drove home as quick as I could after that. I'm a bit obsessed with the details of what happened. That's what's got me so disturbed. The emotionless way she spoke, the creepy way she looked, that SUV. Fuck. I'm surprised I didn't just burst into fucking tears there. I mean, I've been jumped before, but this just seems so crazy and predatory. The last thing she said to me has absolutely haunted me. "You better get out of here right now then." Laying it all out like that, so suddenly giving up the damsel in distress act, that has to be the worst part of this for me.
Number 3. This incident occurred about 6 years ago, when I was 21 years old. Since I was a young kid, a great interest of mine has been herpetology, the study of reptiles and amphibians, and going out and searching for these types of critters, or herping, is my favourite hobby. South Louisiana, where I live, is a great place for herping, and a really good place to find my favourite animals: snakes. On the day of the incident, I was preparing to search for snakes on a road that ran through a swamp near Lake Pontchartrain. By slowly driving down the road and catching snakes that were crossing it. It was late afternoon, and I had stopped at a gas station to fill my truck up before heading out to the herping spot. This particular gas station had a reputation for violent robberies and other unsavory activities, but they also had the cheapest gas prices in town, and it was still light out, so I wasn't too worried. I was pumping gas and daydreaming when an old late model sedan that looked like it had seen better days pulled up beside me. In the car were 4 thuggish young men staring at me. The driver, a very big individual in his late 20s or early 30s, kept looking at me menacingly out of his window. I instantly got very nervous, as I had no idea what they wanted. After a few seconds, the driver said, "Hey little boy, I got damn morphine." I realized that they were trying to sell me drugs. I replied, "Nah man." The driver said again, "Come on little boy, I got damn morphine." And again I told him no. The driver tried several times to push his dope on me, each time calling me some variant of little boy. I'm a very small young man with a slight build, and even to this day, I could pass as a teenager. And while I'm fine with this, I don't like constantly being reminded of it. And I certainly don't like someone using my small stature to intimidate me into doing things that I don't want to do. I finally got fed up and yelled at the driver, "No, I don't want any fucking morphine. Go away and leave me the fuck alone." This drew the attention of several other customers, which caused the guy to leave quickly, squealing his tires as he did. I paid for my gas and headed on out to the road through the swamp. The road itself gets hardly any traffic, as there's a major interstate next to it. Mostly, the traffic consists of people fishing or launching boats, so it's a great place for herping. I stopped my truck at the place where I wanted to begin my search, and began going through several pillowcases that held the snakes that I had found on my previous trip that I needed to let go. Inside each pillowcase, most of which contained small, harmless water snakes, was a scrap of paper that had the mile along the stretch of road they were found. That way, I would know where to release them again. I was making a list of these for efficiency's sake, so that I could quickly release each one and get on with my search. I was checking a case which held a greater than 4 feet long rat snake, when the same late model sedan pulled to a stop behind my truck. All 4 of the occupants piled out and began walking towards me. The driver, who must have weighed a solid 260, was coming straight at me, and all the others were fanning out around me. The driver started yelling, "What's up, little boy? You don't want my shit? We're gonna see what your little punk ass does now." I was scared to death, and had to work very hard to keep my knees from buckling under. I thought about the tire iron in my truck, and I realized that I would not be able to dig it out before they could get to me, and that the fear had drained the strength from me, so that I wouldn't be able to use it effectively anyway. So, I did the only thing I could think to do. I reached into the pillowcase and pulled out the rat snake. The snake instantly drew itself into a coil and began to gape and hiss. The 4 thugs, now only a few feet away, realized what was in my hand and immediately stopped their advance. When the driver began to back away, the movement caught the snake's attention, and it lunged out in his direction. At this, the 4 of them began screaming and cursing loudly, and piled hastily back into their car. They took off so quickly they hit the median, and nearly tore out the bottom of their old car. I stood there, shaking, unable to move for a few minutes. The intimidating but harmless rat snake began to squirm around, and latched onto my hand so that I had to come out of my fear-induced coma. I quickly drove to the release points of all the snakes and let them go, thanking the rat snake as it slithered back into the vegetation and went immediately home without doing any herping. Number 4.
Please note, the following story is from a female's perspective. A little over a year ago, I worked at a gas station. It was one of those 24/7 ones with a mini-mart in it. Its motto was literally, "We never close." And I worked the evening shift, between midday and midnight. Now I saw and dealt with a lot of fucked up things in that store, which just led me to roll my eyes when people were doing or saying something creepy, wrong, or aggressive. Hell, if I had $1 for every time I was threatened with death, I could retire. One night I was out in the store restocking shelves when one of the creepy regulars came in and started talking to me. He was a full druggy bogan. Bogan means redneck in Australian. Think people of Walmart style. He would have been in his 50s, or the drugs had taken their toll, and he was tweaking while hitting on me. By this point in working in that festering hellhole, I just learned to deal with it. Don't ignore them. They get angry. Don't act interested. They get clingy. And sure as hell, do not agree to anything. He was saying some fucked up shit. Something about what he wanted to do with me. I zoned in and out of what he was saying. It wasn't uncommon for him to ramble about perverted acts and other gross things. I tell him I have to get behind the counter because my coworker needs me to make coffee for a customer. We were trained to use an actual coffee machine, none of this coffee pot stuff. He was a bit irritated, but said that he would talk to me later, and then left the shop. After making coffee, I had to restock the drinks, but the day team hadn't emptied the trolley of boxes, so I, albeit begrudgingly, took out the boxes to the big bin. This bin is located around the side of the store, where there are no cameras, and the people inside cannot see out to it. That used to make me nervous, but I had been there longer than some of the people who had come through, and was used to the environment. As I was throwing the boxes in the bin, the tweaking guy from before comes up to me and grabs my arm. I tried to play it off like he was goofing around by laughing and saying something like, "Hey Fred, I know that you like me, but you can't get all touchy-feely on me. The husband will get mad." Sounds like I wasn't trying much, but with people like him, it was best to remain friendly. The last time someone was more firm with him, they got knocked out by his right hook, and I was the lucky girl who got to witness it and call the cops. So the tweaker tightens his grip to a painful point and says in an angry voice, "I told you I was gonna have my way with you." By this time, I have stopped smiling and am now scared. He shoves me against the bin and goes to unbuckle his belt when glass smashed. One of my favorite customers was across the road at the pub and had seen him go straight for me, and knowing his reputation, wanted to make sure that nothing bad was happening. And when he saw what was happening, he smashed his bottle of beer over his head. The cops were called, and I didn't see him again. As for the guy who saved my ass, so to speak, I gave him free coffee for a month. As for the boxes, I refused outright to take them out anymore. My coworker did instead. He traded me for cleaning the restrooms.
Hi guys, Lazy here. Thank you so much for listening to this video, and I hope you enjoyed this collaboration between your maker and myself. He does some great videos, guys, over on his channel, and if you'd like to hear another collaboration between the two of us, then make sure to head on over to his channel, where you'll find a video that we both worked on together again. And yeah, he does some great stuff, so make sure to show him some support. And also, speaking of showing support, make sure to check out Anthony Salinas' work in the description below. He did the thumbnail for this video and basically every other video I've ever done, so he's an amazing artist. He makes some excellent, high-quality images, so make sure to check him out. Join the Lazy Legion by subscribing to make sure you won't miss out on any future uploads, and you'll hear from me again very, very soon. So until then, guys, stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.